Hey there, how are ya? Welcome to Prog Monster. My name is Murph. I am the host of this show. A show that is dedicated to progressive rock, hard rock, heavy metal, and other forms of rock genre. Some rhythm and blues too, I like. Anyways, we're here for episode number 10 of my series, Rock Musicians Who've Thrilled Us but have since passed on. So today we're doing a couple of one guy's fairly well known, the other guy not as well known. I mean, by a select group of people, perhaps. But both pretty interesting characters. One of them's part of the group of 27. But we'll start actually with him first because he died first. Interesting character, somebody I didn't know much about. I think I've seen him maybe once in a video somewhere. Anyways, we're talking about... Oh, I got this. Okay. Sorry. I was just checking my notes. I had them backwards. Anyways, his name was Ron Mckernan, also known as Pigpen, one of the founding members of the Grateful Dead. Grateful Dead is a band that I've listened to bits and pieces over the years. They're not really a band that I listen to regularly, but I appreciate a couple things about them. First, that they were very influential in the style of music they played. And the other thing is that they probably have the most loyal fans of any rock band in history. And there's something to be said for that. Okay, so just the vitals about Ron first, or Pigpen. He was known as Pigpen. He was born September the 8th, 1945 in San Bruno, California. And he died March the 8th, I think it's the 8th, yeah, March the 8th, 1973 in Corte Madera, California. And he was, of course, 27 years old. Also, he was a friend of Janis Joplin, so, you know, there's something to be said for that. Music, he was into blues, rhythm and blues, rock, gospel, psychedelia. Although I think that even though they list him as being into psychedelia, I really think that music genre of psychedelia probably ended his career based on what I've read about him. His instruments were, he was a singer, of course, the vocalist. The primary one initially. He also played organ and harmonica. He was active from 1961 to 72. And his father, who's one of the known people in his family, Phil Mccarron, was an R&B and blues disc jockey. So that probably was the reason why he was prompted into the music industry, because he had familiarity with it. You know, I worked 35 years as a waiter because my parents were also waiters. You know, this is the way it works in life. Generally, you get your foot in the door somewhere, and it's the thing you often know best, unless you go to school and change it and become something else. So anyways, just want to talk about his life and his music and his history, and, you know, how it came to an end. He met Jerry Garcia. They were both working at a music store, and they got together and started going to music clubs and playing and stuff like that. They added another guitarist, Bob Weir. And so the three of them were singing, basically, the songs. And this began the formation of what they called, my understanding is correct, what they called the pre-Grateful Dead groups. The first one being the Zodiacs. So these three called themselves the Zodiacs, basically. And then they became the Mother... I'm going to say this wrong because it's fairly lengthy. Mother McCree's Uptown Jug Champions. Wow, that's a mouthful. Yeah, I don't think that would look too good on a drum. Anyways, they were part of that band. Then they added drummer Bill Kreutzmann, and they became the Warlocks. And then after they became the Warlocks, he encouraged the band. At this point in time, Mckernan allegedly encouraged the band to switch to electric instruments. I guess because that's when it was becoming more modern. Like it was now in the 60s, and if you wanted to become famous and move into the rock genre, you kind of had to play electric, unless of course you're Bob Dylan. Then you only have to do it once to piss everybody off. But anyways, so he encouraged them to switch to electric instruments, and then they added bassist Phil Lesh, and then they became the Grateful Dead. His role, once they became the Grateful Dead, after a while they were playing pretty much covers all the time, cover songs of rhythm and blues, and he sang a lot and had a real rapport with the audience. They liked him, and he just was one of those kind of stage presence that people liked. And he sang the majority of the stuff in the beginning, and then gradually Garcia and Weir and Lesh, they gradually took over the group, and they wanted to move into psychedelia and more jamming stuff, but he wasn't really, how do you say it, he wasn't really a great organ player, and how much jamming can you actually do with a harmonica, I'm not sure. Anyways, so they just gradually, they brought in other musicians, and slowly his role began to be reduced, and there was periods where he was almost going to be kicked out of the band. Him and another guy were going to be kicked out of the band because they weren't going to be able to do what the band wanted to move into. But he, after they didn't kick him out of the band because he was an original, and then so he actually went and took some organ lessons. Whether this improved his organ ability, I'm not sure, but it must have improved it enough to keep him. And they kept him in the band for a while, and then his health began to deteriorate. He had a congenital liver disorder, which was further inflamed because he liked to drink. He was the member of the band who didn't actually do drugs. He liked to drink. That was his thing. And eventually he pretty much drank himself to death. Like, he left the band once to recuperate, then came back, and then gradually began to be reduced. His use in the band became reduced because he was having a hard time keeping it going. And so then he left the band again, and he said he went away and said, I don't want you guys to see me die, and then he died. Pretty sad story, but there was a couple things about him that I liked. First of all, he was a real crowd pleaser. He knew how to talk to the crowd, and he was a gentle. They from all the members said he was a gentle, quiet man who's well liked. I like all these qualities in him. I have some of those qualities, so I like them about him. Anyways, his death was a bit of a tragedy, but could have maybe been avoided, but I don't think he really wanted to avoid it. He didn't really try too hard. And this is maybe the saddest one I've done so far. But, he did do something very, very significant. He was a friend of Janis Joplin, so they knew each other. He also helped form the Grateful Dead and gave them musical direction. They actually do some of the songs he used to sing. They cover them in there, kind of in memory of him, I guess. Anyway, so there you have it. My first person of the evening, Ron Mckernan, otherwise known as Pigpen. They had a couple of different things to explain why he got that nickname. The first one was that he was a bit of a scruffy individual. And the second one was that he looked like the character from Peanuts, Pigpen. Well, I looked at him and I looked at Pigpen, and I don't see really a resemblance other than the cloud of dust around him. So I would have to say it's more likely the first one. But, everybody needs their Pigpens, right? So there you have it. Ron Mckernan, Pigpen of the Grateful Dead. one other thing I would just want to make mention, when the Grateful Dead were inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, he was also inducted post. I can never say this word. Why is that? After he died. Okay, so the second person that I chose to do is probably a much bigger name, more well known, not as perhaps influential in the rock scene as far as the 70s era and the 60s era. He's a little bit further back than that, but he had more impactful in life, I think. And we're talking about Bobby Darin. Bobby Darin, also known as, that was his stage name, because he also was an actor, so he had taken on a stage name. Some rock stars do this too, but it isn't as common as it is in acting. Anyways, his real name was Walden Robert Casoto. His grandfather was associated with the mob element and spent the last years of his life in prison. So, anyways, we'll talk more about that in a few minutes. But anyways, he was born May the 14th, 1936 in New York City. He died December the 20th, 1973 at the age of 37 in Los Angeles, California. He had a lot of music genre that he was involved with: jazz, rock, pop, big band, blues, swing, folk, country. He dabbled in a lot of stuff. He had a bit of a musical kind of background. He was one of those guys who learned a lot of instruments too when he was younger. I don't know if he was exactly like a virtuoso at any of these things, but he did learn to play them. It included guitar, piano, drums, harmonica, xylophone, and of course he was a singer, so vocals as well, right? His years active, 1956 to 1973. His a notable family member, he was married. His first wife was Sandra Dee, who was an actress. If most of you who are older would know who she is. Okay, so enough about his details. Now about him. Okay, so he started out as writing songs for Connie Francis. That's where he got his initial induction into the music scene, was writing songs for Connie Francis. His first hit single was Splish Splash, kind of a poppy, kind of rocky 50s style song. And then he followed that up with Dream Lover, and then of course the big one, Mac the Knife, right? And then Beyond the Sea. So Mac the Knife actually was a #1 song for about 9 weeks. It won an Oscar for Best Song. It won for Best Album. He won a Oscar for Best New Artist, and then posthumously he won a Oscar, Hall of Fame Oscar, I guess they call him. I'm not sure. He worked for. The other thing is he had a writing partnership with Don Kirshner, of all people. I didn't actually see that connection, but I read it, so I assume it's true. Him and Don Kirshner did a lot of writing, like as a partnership, right? Kind of like Lennon and McCartney, but obviously not as famous. But anyways, that kind of thing. So anyways, he later, after his kind of music career kind of went down a bit, he got into the political arena and was actually working in the campaign to elect Robert F. Kennedy to the White House as president. And he was present the day that Robert F. Kennedy was assassinated. And that same year, and unfortunately for him, he found out that his mother, who he had called mother his whole life, was actually his grandmother, and that his sister was actually his real mother. The combination of these two things kind of reclused him. He kind of went into reclusion for a while. I guess it's a pretty hard thing to deal with when you find these things out. So again, another bit of a reclusion. But he did make a comeback. And then he went into, just looking at my notes for a minute. Oh yeah, the one thing I forgot to mention, the reason he got the name, he chose the name Bobby Darin, is that he liked Darin Darin Mccarron, who's an actor, and he took his first name and made it his last name. However, he did retain his last name Casoto, which were attached to his kids. He wanted that. He didn't want the stage name attached to them. And again, like I said, he wrote with Don Kirshner, so that was a pretty famous part for him. He was inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame in 1990 after he had died by his good friend Paul Anka, the Canadian. Anyway, so the things about him that I admired was that he was able to do a lot of stuff. Rock musician, making great songs, acting. He did lots of acting. He acted, actually, his first movie was with his first wife, Sandra Dee. He was politically active, so he had a lot of things on his plate and doing it. And this for a guy who had health issues from the beginning, heart issues from the beginning, and that eventually, he knew that he wasn't going to live forever, so he got into all this stuff fairly early because, his life was probably going to be cut short, and he turned out to be right. He died at age 37 after an operation on his heart in the hospital. So, it's a sad way to go, but, is there any real good way to go? I don't know. But, he did have an impact on the rock scene. My belief is that more so, I think, in his writing than in his actual songs. Yeah, he did have some great songs, like Mac the Knife is well known. I always thought it was a Frank Sinatra song, but obviously he wrote it, and so he was recognized for that. Yeah, so even though he was a rock musician who had some impact singing in that, I really think that his impact was more in his writing style and writing for a lot of different people, which is no less of a talent. You think about some of the great songs you listen to. If they didn't come from a great writer, maybe the musicians performing them wouldn't be able to do the same thing if they were left to try to do it to themselves. Not all musicians do their own writing and music, especially nowadays. Nobody seems to do it. Anyway, so I found him interesting. I had known a little bit about him prior to this video. Of course, I'd heard of him, and I knew that he had acting, and I knew that he was involved in certain things. And that's part of the reason why I chose him, is because I thought he was going to be interesting, and he turned out that he was. This is a guy, well worth looking into if you interested. He made quite a few records. It's not really my style of music, but I do appreciate that he did have a lot of talents. And the thing about him is that he also took chances too, because he had several pop hits that were fairly big, and he decided to try something completely different. And he went on, he sang country music. He did quite a bit of country music, actually. It's not my particular thing, but that's what he wanted to do. He did some swing, and of course he did some big band stuff as well. So it's a guy who wanted to try lots of stuff, and he had, of course, some skill in more than just vocals and quite a bit of instrumentation. So, probably wanted to be able to try use it all. And so, anyways, there you have it. The two for tonight: Bobby Darin, pop singer legend, and Ron Mckernan, also known as Pigpen, musician from the Grateful Dead. So I hope you've enjoyed this video as much as I enjoyed actually reading up and finding out about these two guys and trying to put a kind of a 9 or 10 minute synopsis on their life and give them some overdue, and I wanted to make sure that people don't forget these guys, because it's important. Like, these musicians had some impact in the music field that they chose, and all that adds more musicians, which adds all these CDs that I love to listen to, because people like this contribute to it. And anyways, so our next episode 11, will be coming up on Sunday. Yeah, today's Thursday, so yeah, Sunday. Thursday night, tomorrow morning this video will air, and then Sunday will be number 11. Also coming up tomorrow night is the live, my Friday night live experience with Thin Lizzy live, so hopefully you'll tune in to see what that's about and enjoy that. And then we got some more stuff coming up next week. Monday night we're doing a album look back. Of course, it's album look back Mondays, and this week's album will be from Genesis, so I hope that you Genesis fans will tune in to see what that's about. Wednesday, I'm been working on a couple of things for Wednesday. I think I'm going to go with my first inclination, which is to do my top 25 progressive rock albums. Now, I've thought about this quite a bit and decided I'm going to break it in two. So I'm going to do my top 25, my personal favorite albums that I've had years with. So it's going to be basically anything that I've been listening to for more than 15 years will be included in the top 25 on part A of this two-part series, I'm going to call it. Part B will be albums that came out in the last 15 years that my top 25 albums that came out in the last 15 years. Well, actually, that's not true. They didn't come out in the last 15 years. I discovered them in the last 15 years. That's more of the truth. Because some of these albums have been around for decades, but I never got into them for various reasons. And I will, with each of them, I will explain why this album didn't come about until it came about, but why it's now in the newer list instead of the older list. Because, I just decided to do it this way because a lot of the albums that I like, that I've been listening to longer than 15 years, I've liked for a very long time. Not really fair for these newer albums, which I like quite a bit, to be compared and compete with that because they just don't have the longevity. And sometimes that's a detriment, and sometimes what happens is you like an album so much right now that you want to put it in your top 20, but it really doesn't deserve to be there yet. It has to earn its stripes, so to speak. Does it have the longevity? Anyways, there's quite a few. There's enough to do both, I think. So we're going to do a part A and a part B. So it'll be next Wednesday will be part A, and then the following Wednesday will be part B. And I hope it's going to be interesting. I think it'll be a little bit of work for me to really sit down and think about the albums I want to do. I mean, some of the groups will have more than one. They have to because, my big three, Rush, Genesis, and Yes, are all I've been listening to all of them for 45 years. And I know all of their albums and been listening to them all, and there's a lot of really good stuff by the three bands, so I got to include more than just one. And because it's my favorites, I can do that. I don't have to just have one from each group. That's not what it's about for me in this particular video. It might be about that at some other point, but not this particular video. Anyways, I hope you'll be in line to show up for that as well. So anyways, I hope you had a good experience here tonight, and if you did, please put like and subscribe, and you have a good night. From Prog Monster out.